Hi, YouTube. It's your girl Raquel, and it's day 23 of going live every day because God said so. Don't mind the laundry. We are continuing in the book of Joseph, the book of Genesis, the Joseph story, because it is too good. And yeah, I am just super excited to continue reading it. My lip gloss is popping. So right here. Okay. Yeah, it's a bit to get through, but I feel like we're just going through chunks, and yeah, so super excited. All right, so we're reading, and God's giving me some revelation. But here we go. So, oops, the lighting might be too bright. Like my hat says, I'm just out here trusting God because that's what we do. Okay, so we're going to be reading in Genesis chapter 39. So reading, hey, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. We're just here. Okay. So we're reading Genesis 39, chapter 7, starting at 7, and we're going to go through the rest of it, and then we're going to read all of 40 because it's so good. So you guys follow along. I just tore a page in my Bible. It's okay. All right. So it says Genesis 39, verse 7. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. After some time, his master's wife looked longingly at Joseph and said, "Sleep with me." But he refused. He said, "Look," to his master's wife, "with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in his house, and he has put all that he owns under my authority." So, authority, we're just talking about that, Chrissy. "No one in this house is greater than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. Now, how could I do this immense evil, and how can I sin against God?" Although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her. Good man, right? Now, one day he went into the house to do his work, and none of the household servants were there. She grabbed him by his garment and said, "Sleep with me." But leaving his garment in her hand, he escaped and ran outside. When she saw that he had left his garment with her and had run outside, she called her servant and she said, "Look, my husband brought a Hebrew man to make fools of us." Let's stop right there. So he left his garment again, and not he got it stripped. I can't talk. He got it stripped from him again. So that's just funny to me. He got it stripped, his coat of colors, from his brothers, and then he got it stripped again from her. And it's funny because the first time it was stripped, and then they sacrificed and killed the male goat. And so he escaped, right? And then we found out that he was a scapegoat, which is indicative to just what God allowed to do because God is so good. And then it says that his garment was left in her hand and he escaped. And I was like, oh my gosh, he escaped again, being the scapegoat. And I was like, this is so good. But also, she's married. That's crazy. Wow. So that stood out to me. The fact that this was duplicated again. And again, it shows that the devil tried to take away something that God already gave to him in the spirit. And so he still had favor, which we'll find as I further read. So after she said, he came to me so he could sleep with me. This is verse 15 or 14. He came to me so he could sleep with me, and I screamed as loud as I could. When he heard me screaming for help, he left his garment beside me and ran outside. Amen. It says the first time he got his robe stripped, he got sold as a slave. The second time he got his clothes stripped, he became a prisoner. The next time you hear about him switching clothes or garments is when he goes to meet Pharaoh. And every time he had his garments stripped, he got elevated in position. Absolutely. That's powerful. Wow. Okay, verse 16. She put Joseph's garment beside her until his master came home. Then she told him the same story. The Hebrew slave you brought to us came to make a fool of me, but when I screamed for help, he left his garment beside me and ran outside. When his master heard the story, his wife told him, "These are the things your slave did to me." He was furious, and he had thrown him into prison. Where the king's prisoners were confined, so Joseph was there in prison. Wow. Yeah, that is a lot. And but praise be to God, because the next verse it says, although he was in prison, the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him. He granted him favor with the prison warden. So that was amazing, because you know, something as tragic as that, someone may think, God's not with me anymore. How can this be good? How can good come from this? And I love that was placed there, because it further says that the warden put all the prisoners who were in the prison under Joseph's authority. So again, we see that Joseph was placed um, with the authority, even though he was in prison, and he was responsible for everything that was done there. The warden did not bother with anything under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and the Lord made everything that he did successful. So although he was in prison, we find that this is example, and I'm reading here in my little commentary notes, that God, that we can trust God even in our detours, even when we don't plan for things to happen the way that they do happen. But also, God is the author and finisher of our faith, so he knew this was going to happen. But it says here, living with God's presence in the middle of jail offers a truer freedom than living without God anywhere else ever could. That's awesome, because like I know in my worst days, I still have God. I would rather have God in my worst days than be without God on my best days. Amen. All right, so now we're in chapter 40. It says, after this, the king of Egypt's cupbearer and baker offered their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with these two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guards in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guards assigned Joseph to them as their personal attendant, and they were in custody for some time. The king of Egypt's cupbearer and baker, who were confined in the prison, each had a dream. Both had a dream on the same night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they looked distraught. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We had dreams," they said to him, "but there was no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. "In my dream, there was a vine in front of me. On the vine, there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms came out and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Joseph says, "This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In just 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore to you your position. You will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand the way you used to when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well for you, remember I was with you. Please show kindness to me by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing, but they have put me in the dungeon. And then it says, I'll stop there. So I find it amazing that he was in this dungeon for no reason or a fault that he has done, but he was still serving. He still was serving people in their needs, serving the cupbearer, serving the baker, and helping them. Like, he didn't have to. He could have been like, y'all figure it out yourself, right? And he still glorified God, mentioning that God is the one who interprets dreams. And then the fact that he allowed God to still use him, because I can imagine going through what he's going through, which I have my little bit of my share, and I'm sure someone else can relate as well. But one might think, God can't use me anymore. This happened, right? And Joseph shows us that no matter what happens, God can still use us no matter what we've gone through. So that was really encouraging to read. And then after he says that, verse 16 says, when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was positive, he said to Joseph, I also had a dream. 3 baskets of white bread were on my head. In the top basket were all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. This is the interpretation, Joseph replied. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In just 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from off you and hang you on a tree. The birds will eat the flesh from your body. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he gave a feast for all his servants. He elevated the chief cupbearer. This is the second time I'm hearing elevated today. Okay. He elevated the chief cupbearer and the chief baker among his servants. Pharaoh restored the chief cupbearer to this position as a cupbearer, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But Pharaoh hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had explained. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Let's stop there. I thought you said something else. Man, that is tough. But I see here that it says that this is how our circumstances go at sometimes. Victory appears to be right on the horizon, then suddenly life takes a hard left and the joy we thought was coming disappears. Though through his experiences, Joseph continued to trust God. And it says, though people may leave us and forget us, God never will. And that goes all the way back to the Lord was with Joseph. That encouraged me because this journey can be lonesome. And lonesome in the fact that for maybe a minute, because I've definitely been in the prison, you think that, there's people that forget about you, right? Just like what the cupbearer did for Joseph. But God's never left my side, and he's never left your side. And it's reassuring to read this. And yeah, I'm going to stop here. You got any comments, Chrissy? Because I know you be coming with the revelations out here. But I'm excited to continue to read this. If there's no other comments, I'm going to let y'all have the rest of your night and be blessed. And I will see you tomorrow for day 24. Almost 30 days. I can't believe I'm out here. I'm just out here, trusting God. Be blessed and have a great night.